Late game, fully buffed Prince Imrik is beast mode. But screw the plains of Bone-Ganistan, screw not being able to trade with anyone, and screw Snikch. I'm going home to Ulthuan. Mercy the Mad here, and today we've got an Imrik video. This one is covering Thingymbob's 5-turn guide to Confederating Caledor, which is very fast. What's the rush to get back to Ulthuan, I hear you ask? What's wrong with the Plain of Bones where Imrik starts? Firstly, and perhaps most importantly, all the ports in that area don't connect to any other ports. So High Elves, greatest trading nation in the Warhammer world, can't trade with anyone. Secondly, you're surrounded by natural enemies. You've got Malus Darkblade nearby, you've got Snikch that's going to come for you fairly early and fairly hard. You've got Grom the Paunch and Grimgor blocking your way to the west. Of course, this is winnable. I believe Legend of Total War's got a 20-turn guide for Imrik that'll show you how to defeat Snikch fairly handily. And Axiom has a series of streams where he pretty much runs a clinic on the area. But why bother? The place is a crap hole. You want to just get the hell out of there as fast as you can and go over to beautiful Ulthuan, the land of milk and honey, filled with beautiful legendary lords for you to confederate, landmarks in every city, ports, gold mines. Just go back to Ulthuan immediately and take your rightful place as ruler of Caledor. Here is a step-by-step guide on how to do that. This guide requires you to win a number of quite difficult battles. Often you can use exploits on the campaign map to avoid difficult battles or negate the difficulty. I am going to briefly cover a couple of exploits, but in this video I mainly wanted to focus on exploiting the battle AI and skillful micro inspired by Axiom Razor's amazing Knights of Caledor campaign. I'm not saying that I can pull it off quite as well as he can, but hopefully I don't bring shame on the community, and I'll also put a link down below so you can check out Axiom Razor's original streams. On turn 1, force march Imrik's army towards the Ash Ridge Mountains and join the Fire Mage hero Michaela into his army. Next, recruit an Archmage Lord back at the Fortress of Vorag. Now, in general, I think the meta for Mage Lords is Fire Mage for late game AP damage with Flamestorm, or Life Mage for decent damage with Dwellers Below on blobs, and also for the heals on sort of armies focusing on single entities. But in this particular situation, this Lord is only going to serve a purpose for just for a couple of turns. I'm not going to use them in late game. In late game, I'm going to hire a better Lord, like a 60 Influence Lord that's going to have really good traits. At the moment, I just want a trait that isn't, super bad, and a Lord that's going to have a useful spell at level 1 that I can use straight away. The Fire Mage won't have Flamestorm to start with. They just start with the Fireball spell. Although it says it's weak against armor, I find it does pretty decent damage against single units, especially if you can get them from the flank. It's also very cheap to cast and has a fairly short cooldown, so you can kind of spam this to do decent damage over time. The Lore of Heaven's Archmage gets the spell Wind Blast. This does an expanding tear-shaped attack, which you can aim quite well to sort of rip through enemy units from the side. It's weak against armor. However, it's fairly cheap to cast and has a fairly short cooldown, so you can cast a fair few of these during the battle. For this guide, I'm going to recruit the Archmage of Shadows. The peaky trait shouldn't matter, as I'm not planning on getting any physical resistance on this character anyway. The Archmage of Shadows starting spell is Melkoth's Mystifying Miasma. Again, this is a very cheap spell, has a pretty fast cooldown. It does damage to all of the combatants in a unit, and it's also has a speed debuff, minus 24% speed. My units should all have slightly faster speed than the dwarf units that we're about to fight against, so this might help just to with any kiting that we need to do. Recruit 3 units of archers with your Archmage. Start researching the technology Archery Prowess. On turn 2, you'll be given a new quest, Return of the Prince. Now this is the quest that allows you to confederate with Caledor. You need to occupy, loot, raise or sack 6 different settlements. Now note that if you sack a settlement and then on the next turn occupy the settlement, that'll actually count as 2 separate points towards completing this quest. To get our first point, we'll attack and sack Ash Ridge Mountains. Imrik will have quite a hard battle to fight next turn with no opportunity to replenish after this battle, so you need to ensure that you take minimal casualties. Step 1 is to move the rest of your army out of the way and then use Imrik to waste all of the dwarves' ammunition. Next, you want to bring up Imrik, Michaela the Fire Mage, your Dragon Princes, and the Sun Dragon. Now, your units are faster than the dwarves, so there's no reason that they should really be able to catch you unless you want them to. But these units in particular are all particularly fast, and you want to use them to kite the dwarves around while you use up all of your winds of magic to shoot as many fireballs into them as you can with Michaela. Then use your 3 dragon breaths. Once you've used all of your winds of magic and your 3 dragon breaths, use your fast units to kite the dwarven army around and spread out their units, and then feed them piecemeal into your archers. Keep your dragon flying around near the units that are taking damage from your archers so that they'll get an additional leadership penalty from faster and stronger enemy nearby. They'll also have a possibility of terror routing if they're close enough. This battle should be very easy if you're patient enough. You should be able to destroy the enemy army without taking any damage at all, apart from perhaps a couple of arrows on Imrik. Sack the town, and that'll give you your first point towards the quest. Make sure Imrik is outside of Ashridge Mountain's reinforcement range and put him into forced march stance. If you end the turn in march stance, the 2 nearby dwarf armies should both attack you over the end turn instead of reinforcing the settlements, which is better for you. Move your archmage up towards Darkhold, staying on your side of the border, and recruit 3 more units of archers. Level up Imrik with a point in Route Marcher, and level up your fire mage with a point in Fireball. Over the end turn, both of the dwarf armies will attack you. This battle will be a lot more difficult. The Slayers are fast and can potentially catch your infantry, and you can't outrange their cannon. Set up where their reinforcements enter and try to smash their reinforcements as fast as possible. Focus their quarrelers first while Imrik kites the Slayers away. Once the quarrelers are gone, mob the Dwarf Lord. Your White Lions, Dragon Princes and the Dragon should all do good damage to him. You can run him off the battlefield, but I prefer to kill him to get the extra loot. Reposition your archers and start kiting the Slayers back into range so you can shoot them down. As the other army comes into range, start using Michaela's fireballs to soften them up and start kiting the second unit of Slayers. Here I let them get a little bit close to my mage and I have to use the dragon to sort of extricate her. The dragon can do swoop attacks where you attack the dwarves and then cancel the attack by moving away just as it starts to swoop. It'll sometimes do some damage to the Slayers, but it'll pull out before they get a chance to hit it back. Switch your archers to target the second unit of Slayers, start taking them down. Don't forget to use your dragon breath, particularly if there's a big blob. You need to be aware of the cannons and make sure that they're not targeting your single entity units. As soon as you get an opportunity, send a fast unit to destroy them while they're isolated. Once the cannon are destroyed and the Slayers are eliminated, the army shouldn't really be able to threaten you anymore, as they'll never be able to catch up to you and you can just kite them around and take them apart piecemeal. Try to kill as many of the fleeing units and especially the lords as you can for money and dragon snacks. Turn 3. You could attack this army for some extra XP, but then you won't likely have enough movement to get back to Ashridge unless you use an exploit, which I'll show you later, that allows you to get around these sort of movement restrictions. But for now, just take Ashridge, occupy that, and that'll give you the second point that you need for your quest. Next, attack Darkhold with your Archmage army. This is going to be another difficult battle, but again, with patience, you can win this one. To start with, hide your archers in the forest. Use your Archmage to kite the entire enemy army while simultaneously wasting the Quarreler's ammunition. You'll need to jink from side to side so you don't take too much damage from the Quarrelers. At the same time as you're wasting their ammunition, you're going to also be doing damage to the enemy army with this spell. If you recruited an Archmage of Shadows, you'll have Melkoth's Mystifying Miasma. The enemy Longbeards have high armor and shields, so they'll be hard for your archers to deal with, so focus on them first with the spells. You can also use your spells to do some damage to the Miners. That'll lower their combat potential or balance of power. Don't bother damaging the Quarrelers with your spells though, as most of their balance of power will be gone once their ammunition is spent anyway. Once you've wasted all of the Quarrelers' ammunition and you've used all of your Winds of Magic to do as much damage as possible, then you can reveal your archers. Your archers' foot speed is faster than the dwarves, so as their infantry comes towards you, just back away and spread out your archers and you can just kite them to death from here. After the battle, just sack Darkhold, don't occupy it, and then that will give you another point towards your quest. Before the end of the turn, recruit 3 archers with Imrik, and then demolish all of the buildings in Vorag. You'll abandon Vorag next turn, but you make more money if you demolish the buildings separately rather than just abandoning everything at once. Level up your Fire Mage, put 1 point into Kindle Flame so you'll do more damage with all your fire magic, and you can take a point in the Burning Head. Just put a couple of points into Imrik's blue line on the way to Lightning Strike. If you didn't destroy the Dwarf army, the remnants may move into Darkhold, and you'll have to fight them when you attack Darkhold again this turn. It looks like a lot of units, but it's just the same deal as before. Kite their whole army around, waste all the Corral's ammunition, be patient, and use up every bit of Winds of Magic to damage the Dwarven army as much as you can with your spells. Focus your Melkos Mystifying Miasmas on the full stacks of Dwarven warriors first. Finish off the damaged army with your archers. You might have to work a little bit harder to kite them this time. Again, just spread out your archers, and whenever an archer unit isn't being hard pressed by one of the Dwarven melee units, just turn around and shoot at something. The Dwarf units are just too slow, and they cannot beat your dancing elven feet. Occupy Darkhold, giving you 4 out of 6. Move Imrik up towards Mount Greyhag. Now before the end of the turn, disband your Archmage at Darkhold, recruit a new Lord of Vorag, any Lord, it doesn't matter. Demolish Vorag, demolish buildings in Ashridge and Darkhold for any extra cash you can get. Turn 5, sack Mount Greyhag with Imrik's army, giving you 5 out of 6. And then recolonize the Fortress of Vorag, giving you 6 out of 6. By now, you should have 25 influence. Choose Favors Abound, which will grant you welcome at court, which will give you plus 40 relations to all High Elf factions. And there you go, Confederation with Caledor completed on turn 5. What you do from here is up to you, but I strongly suggest that you get out of this area and go back to Ulthuan where you belong. The Plane of Bones is not a good place for elves. Just abandon all of your settlements and your armies in the east. I recommend that you actually keep the Fire Mage, as you won't be able to replace her for some time. Just start marching her overland back towards Caledor. It will take about 18 turns, and you have to pay her wages the whole time, but it is still faster than you can recruit a new mage. If you're feeling lucky, you can perform agent actions, hoping for a critical failure. If the mage gets wounded after you've abandoned all of your eastern settlements, she'll respawn over at your new area in Caledor. Targeting a higher level character will give you more chance of critical failure, but it might be hard to find a high level character this early in the game. 5-turn Confederation of Caledor is pretty fast, but if you want to do it even faster and you're not afraid to break the game a little bit, there's an exploit we just call the movement bug that basically allows you to get free movement. This exploit's been around for a while, but I haven't covered it on my channel before, so I thought I'd include it here. Just a little disclaimer, this bug is unfortunately kind of available to use anytime with no real downside, and I suspect it's going to be difficult for CA to fix it, so it's probably going to be in the game for a long time. So if you're a bit lacking in self-control, you might want to skip this part, as once you've seen it you won't be able to unsee it. But if you're still watching, then I'll assume that you're all big boys and girls and can look after yourselves. Entities on the campaign map, both heroes and armies, have a sort of invisible circle around them, and moving into that circle doesn't cost you any movement. To be clear, you'll still use up movement when you're approaching a character, but that last step when you're just outside the immediate circle around the character to when you move right adjacent to the character, that last step won't cost you any movement. You've probably noticed this effect in the past when moving supporting armies. At first they won't have enough movement to get past, and then after you move suddenly they do. That very last step when they moved adjacent didn't cost any movement. Typically you wouldn't really notice it, as it's only sort of one step out of about 20 that your character would make on the campaign map. However, if you move two characters together in lockstep, just moving one square at a time, what ends up happening is the rear character will just be only moving from just outside to just adjacent to the front character every step they take, essentially getting that step for free each time and using no movement at all. Once the character that's in the lead has nearly exhausted its movement, you swap their places. The new lead character should still have its full movement, so you can essentially double the movement range this way. This gets even more broken if you can include multiple heroes in your army. Once the lead units run out of movement, just take a hero from your army and then that can become the leader. It'll still have full movement because it's also getting advantage of the movement bug while it's within the army. With enough heroes and the patience to actually go through the effort of doing it, this exploit will allow you to cross the whole map in one turn. It's a really powerful and useful tool and a lot of fun to use, at least at first. It does severely reduce the difficulty of the game, so if you're playing on a higher difficulty, that may not be what you want. So in conclusion, screw the plains of Afghanistan, screw not being able to trade with anyone, and screw Snikch. I'm going home to Ulthuan.